Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to do a recap and review of the penultimate episode of Season 1 of The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. It was called Become, and as it starts, we see Father Gabriel basically getting buzzed by a helicopter as he's walking in the woods, and is then confronted by a walker that he easily takes out. Rick and Michone are, of course, on a road trip, having fled the collapsing hotel after the crash of their helicopter, and they seem very much to be enjoying each other's company. They do a little gift shopping for their kids in an abandoned Wyoming lodge gift shop before backpacking through the woods and coming across a bunch of folks being attacked by walkers whose skin is so hard due to nearby sulfur vents that they have a difficult time putting them down because they can't penetrate their noggins initially. Then, even after they gave the people that they rescued some food, the people try to hustle them at gunpoint for all their stuff, but it doesn't go well for them. As Michonne and Rick are later bedding down in a cabin at the lodge for the night, a cloaked figure approaches and bypasses their wire traps. In a flashback to 3 years ago, Father Gabriel is blessing some water in the woods when he's approached by Jadis. Gabriel gives her a hug and she tells him that she's not actually coming back, but just wanted to see him, as well as that he can't tell anyone that she's there. Gabriel then mentions to her that Rick died and she pretends not to know what he's talking about. Back in the present, we see that the cloaked figure approaching the cabin was, of course, Jadis, and she surprises Rick and Michonne in bed. The three argue about Jadis, whose name is Anne, which I may have known before and forgotten, and her crazy motivations for hunting them down, as well as that she may have killed Gabriel, before she shoots at them but misses when they evade her shots and are able to then wound her before chasing her as she flees. We then flash back to 2 years ago, and Gabriel and Anne are talking again, this time about how he once found a ring and put it away for Rick to eventually give to Michonne, which never happened. She kind of gives him a hint of her role in the CRM before he gives her the ring that he was holding for Rick, because he says it's a symbol of love and that it may help her realize that she shouldn't continue on the journey that she's on with the CRM. Back in the present, Rick and Michonne are chasing Jadis in their vehicle as she flees in her vehicle, but Rick says they can't kill her because of her contingency plan, wherein she has a dossier that upon her death would come to light and cause hell to be brought down on Alexandria. Both vehicles end up crashing, though, and Anne is horribly wounded, causing her to approach the people that Rick and Michonne had saved earlier, asking for help. Apparently, Rick plans to interrogate Anne to figure out where she hid this dossier so that he can kill her if need be and also prevent anything from happening to Alexandria. The people lead Rick and Michonne into a trap at Anne's behest, but of course, once again, Rick and Michonne get the better of them, and they actually end up getting taken out by walkers. In a flashback to a year ago, Gabriel and Anne are meeting again, and she tells him that she's been up to bad things again on behalf of the CRM because she believes in the cause and the mission, but she doesn't go into detail. She then does, in fact, knock Gabriel down and hold him at gunpoint, intent on killing him because he's a loose end. In the present, Rick and Michonne are still facing off with Anne, who almost sacrifices herself to a couple of walkers, which Michonne prevents by killing the walkers. Rick and Michonne then make a deal with her whereby Rick will go back with her to the CRM as the lone survivor of the chopper crash after Michonne gets some supplies so that Anne doesn't die from her wounds, and Anne agrees to let Michonne go on her way. Of course, Anne then pulls a gun on Rick while Michonne is supposedly getting supplies, but Michonne, of course, gets the drop on Anne, and in the confusion, Anne ends up getting bitten by the walkers who used to be the woods people. We then see in flashback that Anne didn't kill Gabriel after all. In the present, as Anne's dying, she confesses the location of the dossier on Alexandria, and Michonne and Rick vow to take down the CRM after Rick goes back for the echelon briefing. Anne gives Rick the ring for Michonne and then asks him to kill her before she turns, and he obliges with a bullet to the brain. Later, Rick proposes to Michonne in the woods, down on bended knee and everything. Gabriel shows up for his present-day meeting with Anne, but of course, she's not there. The episode closes on what seemed to be a helicopter moving in to rescue Rick and Michonne. So I like this episode. I didn't think it was anything special, certainly not after last week's episode, which I thought was fantastic. But it's possible I didn't think it was anything special because I have forgotten in its entirety all of Anne's post-heap life on the show. I know she had this history. I've seen clips of it since watching the episode, but I don't remember it at all. At all, at all. And I'm sad by that because I feel like it would have been more moving to me to watch her scenes with Gabriel in this episode and for her to die the way she did in this episode, but I don't remember any of it. I also don't remember what she did on World Beyond. I remember her being in it, but I don't remember anything she did in it and anything that happened to her in it because I found that entire show to be forgettable, honestly. So this episode is probably better than I can give it credit for because I don't remember her life with the other survivors on the show. And that's because the latter seasons of The Walking Dead, as I've said a million times, were subpar to me, and I have forgotten whole swaths of it, of those seasons because they weren't very good, at least not compared to the first couple of seasons. So I wanted to acknowledge that this episode is probably better than I'm able to say that I found it to be. That said, I did still like it, and I'm very intrigued still by the Jadis character because what did come out in this episode is that she is really two people. She's Anne and she's Jadis. And we did see a little bit of Anne in a previous episode of this show where she's with Rick in the city, in the CRM, and she's acting normal, which I found curious. And as such, I think she's an interesting character. And if I may say so, a tragic character, which I always have an affinity for, especially when it comes to them having a redemption arc, which apparently she did, though it didn't go where most redemption arcs go, in that she went back to her old ways after kind of, I guess, redeeming herself. And that's kind of sad. But from a narrative standpoint, it speaks to the human condition because that's something that's going to happen to humans. And so I have to appreciate it on that level. And I do. I suppose in the very end, she still kind of redeems herself, but I don't think that once she joined the CRM, she ever fully went back to being whatever brand of normal person she was between the time she left the heap and joined Hilltop and then joined the CRM. So I can't say that I see where she was fully redeemed again or ever, but she did tell them the location of the file. Presumably, we'll find out in the season finale. And I suppose that means something. It speaks well of her to some extent. It's just sad that the real person, the real good person, Anne, is in there and didn't really ever get to come out, except maybe for a couple of years when she was living normally. That she died Jadis, you know. But again, part of the human condition, and in that way, moving. It just didn't hit me like a ton of bricks the way I think it would have if I had remembered her story. So maybe I'll have to try to go back and watch some of the older episodes of the original show that she was featured in so that I can fully appreciate how her story ended. But this episode did highlight that the struggle took place, that there was a struggle between her better nature and her commitment to the CRM, which she had because she believed in the mission and she believed she was trying to help humanity overall. But her, allegiance to them also meant that she was party to their methodology, which is kind of evil. Sending strong people off to die, hoarding resources, gassing people, as we saw them do a couple episodes ago. So it's just sad all the way around. And I'm sad for Gabriel as well. And I would have been bummed if he had been killed. So I'm glad he wasn't, even though Jadis told Rick and Michonne she had killed him. She didn't. And so it was good to see him again. It was good to see him caring about Anne and being a good guy. But it was sad to see that he was sad at the end that she didn't come, though he doesn't necessarily realize she's dead, though he probably suspects it, just because that's the nature of the world these days on the show, his world, that is. But, we got to see Rick and Michonne being Rick and Michonne, which is good because they're great characters and they lived up to their ideals in this episode, and that's great. And I think it set up the finale really well. Next week, we're going to see Michonne try to get the dossier from the CRM location that Anne/Jadis hid it in, while Rick tries to go back and tell the story that he and Michonne just survived the crash and they're back now and everything's cool and you have no reason to suspect us of anything. And oh, can I have that echelon briefing now? After which, assuming he gets it, they're going to try to take down the CRM, which I have no idea how they're going to do that. You know, because we're not talking about Negan or the governor here. We're talking about a frickin' full-fledged, very powerful military. So I don't imagine if that occurs, it's going to be in this one episode. There's going to have to be a season 2 if they're going to accomplish it. Another reason I think there's going to have to be a season 2 is because I don't think we're going to get to see Rick and Michonne go home to their kids in this one last episode of the season, unless it's for like 5 seconds at the very end, and I don't think they're going to do that. So in order to see them get home, as it were, there's going to have to be a second season. But who knows? Maybe there won't be. Maybe they'll leave them out there trying to take down the CRM, and we'll never know if they succeed or get home. I hope they don't do that. But it's always possible. You never know. They could end up not being able to get a renewal. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I will be back to do a recap and review of the finale once it's aired. Until I return, as always, I wish you peace and long life.